Hi, it's editing Eli here. Coming at you from after this episode was recorded. I just wanted to say that we had some audio errors on this episode, and so we used, instead of the normal audio we would use to edit, we used the Skype recording. So if there are any audio editing errors or strange sounds on this episode, that's because we're using a different audio setup than normal, and it has somewhat affected the quality. Regardless of that, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, after this episode, we hope to see you back again next week. Thank you.
Okay, and then I'm starting my recording now. Ooh.
Starting my recording now.
Ditto.
Cool.
Epic.
All right. I should have done this before, but I didn't because I'm bad.
You're
all
not
right.
bad.
She's a queen of sarcasm, one of the best horror writers the nerds know, and in a constant game of verbal one-upmanship with Eli. This week, Aanisah Johnson-Agee joins Eli and Caroline on the podcast to take the nerds on a spook-tacular journey through the world of horror. Aanisah knows how to toe the line between horror and comedy. Eli has not known sleep since The Watchers in the Woods. Caroline reads scary movie Wikipedia summaries instead of actually watching them, and all three are total nerds.
It's August again.
Mm-hmm.
Yay!
Week 2, baby!
Week 2. And even though it's the second week of August, my name is still Eli and my pronouns are they, them, theirs.
My name is still Caroline and my pronouns are still she, her, hers.
My name is Aanisah and my pronouns are she, her.
Ooh.
It's Hey Nerd.
It's Hey Nerd. It's this thing that we do sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Aanisah is here. We already kind of introduced her. I don't know why I think our system got a little messed up. But our friend has arrived. And I'm asking the Brendan question, which is another thing I should have prepared for. I'm not doing well, but the question is, if you were an emotion from Inside Out, which emotion would you be?
Anger all the time.
Ball of rage.
Look, I'm like the Hulk. Like, you know, like I'm Bruce Banner on like the outside, but like I'm always angry.
An internal Hulk.
Yeah. It's the quote from that movie that came out.
Yeah, that everyone watched. Everyone has watched at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna surprise absolutely no one with this, but sadness, because you know what? The joke is that I'm the small emo boy, but also I have like a similar haircut to sadness, and I think we dress somewhat similar and just like, cold weather dressing no matter what time of year it is and looking soft but also sad. I feel like that kind of encapsulates who I am as a person.
Yeah, you're wearing glasses and a blue shirt, which is kind of the colors. I don't know, I guess today I'd be Joy just because she seems like she tries really hard at everything, and I just spent like an hour and a half trying to figure out how to write with a dip pen so I could write fancy letters. So that's a thing I did.
You mean dip in the ink? Cool.
Yeah, you it's like a glass like twirly thing, and then you dip it in the ink, and then you put it on the paper, and then all the ink splashes out onto the page for the first few letters or so.
No cap.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There literally is no cap. That's not how those pens don't come with caps.
So what do you do when you're like halfway through the ink in the pen, but like you're done? You just have to leave it there?
Yeah,
Loose
pretty
ink?
much. I often have the reverse problem. Like the first time it's like goosh, and like the ink goes everywhere, and like the letters start bleeding, and then you get like halfway through a sentence, and it's like you get like through like one curve of a letter, and suddenly it runs out, and so you have to like shift the pen around a lot to try and get the ink to come back out again. It's a whole process, man. It's like my fingers are all stained with ink now, and I've washed them like twice. It's a process, but I'm glad I did it because it's a fun thing to do, and like writing letters is nice because I get to give people fun pieces of mail instead of boring pieces of mail, which is most mail.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know. 90% of my mail is from colleges.
Yeah,
And
Same, but also
exactly. I'm trying to fight that. Yeah.
mm,
stuff like
nice.
that. So,
Well, I guess you kind of already started it. But this is the time for our anecdotes that we have. My
Mhm.
anecdote is that I've moved on from Norwegian. Norwegian was fun, but I have accepted the fact that it's not usable. And now I'm learning Japanese using Duolingo, which is
Weeb.
not much better, but I feel like I'm already on track to be like, yeah, I'm probably in line become full weeb, as Caroline has immediately insulted me with. But yeah, I think it's also that like the two-step translation process for Japanese, because you have to like take characters and turn that into like a romanization and then take the romanization and turn it into English, makes it feel more like puzzle solving, which activates the right part of my brain for learning languages. Because like, you know, I don't know, single step language translation is not enough for my brain. I need dual step language translation for some reason, which is why like non or languages that aren't in the Roman alphabet, it's not the actual name of the alphabet, but that's how I've always referred to it, are very fun and interesting.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm learning Japanese now because I didn't have enough things to do in August, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who learned Chinese for like 2 years in middle school, I can't speak to how much Japanese is. It is hard to remember individual words when like different sound like there isn't really a root system that like to
Hmm.
latch onto very easily. So just be careful with that. And the sounds
Well,
don't correspond to the characters, which is also fun. So,
well, I mean, it is also true that I think unlike China, and I also don't know about Chinese.
mhm.
Japanese does have like a core system of like certain symbols indicate certain sounds. Like
Oh
they have
damn.
I'm not gonna mess this up, so I'm gonna go to Duolingo so I get the name kind of right.
Yay.
But they have like the hiragana system, which is like each individual sound has a correlated symbol, which makes it a little bit easier than like a
Mm.
completely, because it's still
Yeah.
symbols, but they have like rote meanings as opposed to like just tossed into the wind, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I also have only done like two. I mean, you know how Duolingo works because I'm not going
Mhm.
to explain it, but like I've done
Yeah.
two of the lessons, so I don't know what
Ah.
awaits me as I get into more complicated
Yeah.
Japanese. But
Could also be
yeah.
that I learned Chinese weird, so who knows?
Mm.
But I wish you luck in that, Weeb.
I'm just an idiot.
Mm.
Languages don't compute. But like, I mean, my anecdote, I guess. I've made like two. I was about to say four, but that's a lie. Two. I baked like two things that were like really freaking awesome. I made tiramisu and a
Nice.
strawberry
Ooh.
roll cake.
Ooh.
That was
Mm.
really fun. Like for a second, from the strawberry roll cake, I thought that like I was doing it wrong because like it was a lot less batter than I thought it would be.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I realized my pan. I just did not have the right tools. But it was fine. It was fine. It's kind of ugly. Well, it's not. It looks like a cake. It looks like a roll cake.
That's good.
I think that's how it's supposed to look. That's really cool. So you've been getting into baking in quarantine.
Oh my god, yes. I have so much time now.
Yes. Excellent.
Yes. All right. Is it time for our graceless segue?
Yeah. Time for a
Yeah.
graceless segue. Graceless as any we ever do on this podcast.
We're jumping out a window, we're dropping into a dumpster, we're rolling out of the dumpster and back in through the front door. And that front door is to a haunted house because this week, yeah, that was unplanned, but I added a little bit of grace at the end of that segue.
That was
I love
good.
that
Just a
metaphor.
smidgen. Because we're talking about horror this week.
Woo!
Yeah, we
Yeah.
are. I'm
I'm sure to
Aanisah,
say woo.
sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think out of the three of us, Aanisah, you probably like horror the most.
Mhm.
Oh
So,
my god.
what is the argument for horror in your mind?
Okay, we as human beings, like we're kind of fucked up. So the argument for horror is you get to experience like all those like thrills and like dangerous emotions that like without any of like the actual danger. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love watching Freddy Krueger shove a girl's head into a TV. However, I don't want that to happen to anyone, nor do I want that to happen to me. So I did all of that
Uh-huh.
without the the physical pain and dying, actual people dying. That is the argument for horror. And also, it's just, I don't know. I have a twisted brain, so I like. This is gonna sound. Nobody like.
Don't institutionalize Aanisah.
Yeah, I'm gonna be an FBI.
Don't come for Aanisah over this.
But I think it's really interesting thinking of all the ways you could just scare the shit out of people.
Mm.
Isn't that what most like humor is based off like the unexpected?
Mm-hmm.
And that's crying and laughing and screaming all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So it just speaks to me.
Yeah.
I love laughing. I don't love crying, but I do love screaming because
it's more fun.
It's more fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, the argument for horror in your mind is the same argument as for roller coasters, where it's like experiencing death in a controlled environment.
Exactly.
All right.
Or, yeah, near death, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like we both, Caroline, you and I, kind of expressed that we're not the biggest fans of horror.
Mm-hmm.
I think my problem is that I have an overactive imagination, which means I see one horror thing and then I can't sleep for 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Because my brain just replicates that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Which is not fun.
Yeah, I can imagine that someone who created an entire plotline and mythos for Star Wars based off of one image of the back of Darth Vader's head would also have a tough time with a full movie of scary stuff going on. I can see that for you. I think for me, the reason horror doesn't hold as much of an appeal, especially like the graphic, like super gory stuff, is just for me like I feel things real strongly, and so making me feel like strong emotions already is not great because it's like I'm just gonna magnify that times 10, and so when I get scared, I'm very scared. And I also, yeah, same problem. I have an overactive imagination, and I'm like, well, I'm just not going to be able to rest for the next few weeks. But I do like kind of creepy horror or like horror literature. Like if you give me a book about like a spooky ghost in a mansion, I'm like all over that shit. But yeah, if you ask me to like see someone's arm get chopped off, I'm gonna nope the fuck out.
Caroline, I realized that I really fucked up. We never did 3, 2, 1, hey nerd.
I was gonna say something, but then you moved past it, and I was like, you know what? We're shaking it up. We're subverting the genre.
No, we just messed up. All right. Well, I guess this is the acknowledgement that I know that I forgot to do something. So before someone says something to me.
Yeah.
About
we know
it.
We did. Don't fucking at us about it.
Don't attack us.
Yeah. Or you can just email us, heynerdpodcast@gmail.com with complaints.
Yeah. But getting back to horror. Yeah, I think my problem is that I do the same thing with movies what I do with movies, I also do with books. Did you ever have to read, it was like The Monkey's Paw? It's one of those really classic horror short stories.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's like, it's a kind of almost, from what I remember, it's kind of like a genie-esque story where this monkey's paw grants you 3 wishes, but then the wishes are twisted and horrifying, and they're gonna come and murder you in your sleep.
Can I?
Yeah. Like, if you remember the story, you should. If you remember the story, you can get into it.
I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but like, basically, someone wants someone to come back to life, and they do, but it's not like not like zombies are out, not like, hey, my fully formed and like mentally stable loved one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an intense story, and it's like one of the hallmarks of the horror genre, and I read it, and then I had vivid nightmares about that, because I don't need to see anything for my brain to produce vivid nightmares. I can just read it, and then my brain's like, I see you want me to work overtime this Tuesday. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I think if I enjoyed feeling fear in that way, I would enjoy horror, because then horror would work really well for me. But the problem is, I, as a person who has anxiety in general, don't need to be artificially adding fear and anxiety to my daily life, because I have that enough already.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate horror. I just think it because of my brain, it doesn't really work for me.
Yeah. So Aanisah, yeah. Oh wait, you go ahead.
No, but that's the thing about me. I kind of have all of those things. No, no lie. But I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
But like you enjoy that feeling is
yeah,
the
I
thing.
do. Like, it's really messed up when you think about it. But like, I really do, and like enjoy like that feeling. Like, I hate because here's the thing: if I watch a horror movie at night, I will absolutely sleep with the lights on. Like, I can't do it. And like it does like stick in my brain. Even the most mundane horror images like stick in my brain
Mm-hmm.
and like haunt me like at really inconvenient times. But I keep coming back to it. I just love it.
Sorry, I just thought of like the "I just can't quit you," which is like a quote from a romance novel, but it was you in horror.
Yeah, like like that really that's basically me. Like I'm in a really unhealthy relationship with horror, and I keep coming back because I'm so distant.
I mean, I would argue, can you have like, from what you've described, if what you've described is like an unhealthy relationship, do you think there's a way for anyone to have a healthy relationship with horror, or do we just kind of need to like divorce it from those dynamics and ideas? Like, what do you think? Kind of like, like what do you?
I want to say yes because horror. I've heard horror can kind of be like a release.
Mm.
That might sound weird to people who are like
Yeah.
deathly afraid, but like when I guess just when like you feel kind of like especially if the mundane just kind of stifles you a little bit.
Mhm.
Getting that extra adrenaline, like it's like roller coaster. Just getting that extra
Yeah.
adrenaline rush just kind of like perks you up, and like you're awake now. And it's just as for whether the argument of whether it's healthy or not is, I mean, you can debate for a little while, but
Yeah.
like I think if it perks you up, it just like if it gets you through the day, then yeah.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
I've seen this thing from Jenna Stieber for Polygon on why horror, porn, and melodrama are all actually part of the same genre. They're all
Oh God, you have to say
yeah,
that.
a great video. And they're all basically something called body genres, which is like instead of a comedy where you're laughing at the characters or what they're doing, like rarely does anyone laugh at jokes in a comedy movie. With like melodramas and horror and porn, you're kind of like put into the same emotional situation as like the characters. So when someone else feels afraid, your body produces the same afraid response because you're like basically being treated like the main character. And when like in a melodrama somebody starts crying, you start crying because you're in that same situation. And I don't need to explain the thing. I don't think we need to go.
And porn.
He's like, go ahead.
But I think yeah, like having something that is kind of that cathartic of like going through those emotions in a place that is like, ultimately you end up being safe, but your body still produces those good brain slimes, and you can like go through that emotional roller coaster, especially if you're like in a rut of just not feeling super strongly. I can understand how like that would be super, useful and healthy and kind of like emotionally good, because it's like it's good to have a good cry sometimes, and for some people maybe it's good to just have a good little freak out sometimes.
I mean, I think it's like there's this base, maybe not base human desire, but I think in a lot of people there's like this instinct that pushes us towards danger, and it's like it's the same thing as like the call of the void, the idea that when you're standing at the top of a building, if you look down, there's always going to be a part of you that's like, what happens if I jump? Because it's you want to go to like the most extreme, most dangerous response is just like something that exists in a lot of people's brains. And so I definitely understand like the call towards danger because I am in fact an adrenaline junkie. I don't know if that's been like openly expressed to people, but I feel like Caroline has watched me do dumb things on streets enough to know that I get a rush out of almost dying. So I think it's like I understand that kind of that. I think horror gets to that same place as like it's pushing you into a dangerous scenario without like really pushing you into actual danger. So it almost makes it safer than I think a lot of the stuff that I do. Because at the end of the day, like horror, it's not going to kill you. Running across the street in front of a car, that might kill you.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Eli, is that you don't dislike horror because it's too strong for you. You dislike horror because it's not strong enough.
I dislike horror because what happens is like when I go on a roller coaster, or when I like almost get hit by a car, or when something adrenaline rushing happens, I don't keep thinking about that for 3 weeks afterwards. Like the terror of that moment stays in that moment, whereas with horror, the terror of that moment stays with me for a long time, and it's just harder for me to like my brain deals with adrenaline from like actual dangerous scenarios differently, so like that doesn't follow me as much, which
Yeah.
I think is why I prefer that over horror. But I like understand the call of danger is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
So we've been bandying about the term horror. So do we want to like delineate that into mediums at all in terms of like podcasts, books, movies, or are we gonna like specifically be discussing like horror is kind of a genre of movie? Like, what are you most drawn to, Aanisah, within that kind of scope?
I mean, I love horror like at all mediums, but
Mm.
like they definitely do all have their strengths. Like you can't get what you can get from like a movie as same as you can get from like a book or a video game,
Mm-hmm.
especially a video game.
Oh yeah.
Because video games you are actively controlling the character. Like movies, like they do kind of slip you in to, like,
Yeah.
a mindset of the character, but video games you are actively controlling a person. It kind of like feels like you're responsible for like how many lives they have, like what supplies they have, and that just kind of slips you even more
Yeah.
into like the situation. So it's extra terrifying, especially in first person.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, if I had to be biased over like what genre, like what medium of horror I prefer in quotes,
Mhm.
it'd be video games, because that I just even like I'm a horror like junkie, but like I physically can't, like I have to
Yeah.
like turn off the screen for like a good while and just
Yeah.
chill.
Yeah, Anissa, speaking of horror video games, sorry, were you part of the group that was playing Doki Doki Literature Club our freshman year?
Yes, I was.
Double Doke Lit Club.
Yeah,
Memory.
because that's one of the, like, I think the horror games where it gets to you the most because it crawls inside your head is like something completely, it Trojan horses you essentially.
Yeah.
Because it gets inside your head is like, oh, I'm a dating sim, and then Monica really did do that, huh?
Yep, she did.
Goes all out. It's quite something. Yeah.
So,
That was fun. Yeah, for I guess listeners at home, our freshman year of high school, we all played Double Doke Lit Club, Doki Doki Literature Club. I keep mixing up those two names because the first one was the nickname we had for it, and that one stuck way more. And yeah, it's a visual novel that's masquerading as like a romance visual novel.
yeah,
And
well,
then
it's a dating sim. We called it a visual novel so our teacher would let us play it in class.
Yeah.
Let's not mix words here.
It wasn't even in class. It was like during study hall during finals week. So technically we were fine. And we like ran around and like we all like did voices for each of the characters to read aloud, and I was Sayori for those wondering.
I think I was Yuri. I'm not sure.
I think so.
You were Yuri, because I think you were doing like a really deep voice for Yuri.
Yes. Yes. Which funny coincidence. When I watched like the Game Grumps.
Oh
like,
yeah.
After that, and then I was like, wait, like we were on the wave. Like we both did like a really super deep voice for Yuri.
Yuri has deep voice energy, I guess, is what we're learning.
Oh, so.
But yeah, it's a Doki Doki Literature Club is, I think, one of the games that will go down as like one of the best horror games, because I've heard people freak out about it. I've never heard anyone actually like say anything bad about it as a game. They are like, I'm so scared, but I don't think anyone has, like legitimately, or maybe it's just because I didn't super look into it, but it seems like a game that was really well received and really well like complimented for what it was.
Yeah.
I do like I've heard some of the backlash, but mostly like it was just kind of though those people who are like when things get really popular, those people are all like, oh, this is just flooding the media, and it's terrible because it's so popular.
Yeah.
Those kind of people. So like mostly it was just kind of that. I can't remember like any like genuine criticism that didn't have that kind of air to it.
Yeah. I'm gonna say my brother got Outlast a while back. He's not a horror person either, but he was like, I'm gonna try to play this and you can sit next to me and do that. So we're like going through and he's like, I'm pretty sure or no, he was like, we were, doing some light B&E at the beginning of the game, because that's what you have to do to get into the asylum. And I was like, no, don't, like, be careful, like, don't sneak around these doors or whatever, like, just please be careful. And he was like, there's not a jump scare around here. And then he, like, moved forward to open a door, and he was like, wow. And then, like, as he opened the door, a fucking jump scare happened, and he, like, leapt back, paused the game instinctively. I was like, fuck me!
That's
exactly what you get, you know?
As soon as you said Outlast, I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, it was great. And I was like, oh, Sandy, you should really, like, you're playing as a freelance journalist in a clearly decrepit old asylum with, like, no backup whatsoever. And my brother just went, if I was in this situation, I would not be in this situation. Which I think is applicable to most media when you're watching it, like, damn, that's stupid.
Yeah. Aanisah, what's your favorite horror game?
Oh, really enough, I mean, low-key, it's kind of Outlast. But actually, if I had to just pick, like, genuinely, it would be Devotion. It's this game. It's, I think it's Korean in nature. Like, basically, it's spoiler alert, but, like, basically, all I'll say is this Asian family is just moving to this apartment. You're the dad. You play as a dad, and it's completely empty. It's kind of completely empty when you wake up, but you kind of go through this journey of figuring out what happened to the family, because the apartment just looks like a hot mess. Your wife is gone, and super spoiler alert! Like, click off if you don't want to hear this, but your child is dead.
Spicy.
And it's like, it comes from like this historical. Here's the thing about, I'm pretty sure it's Korea. Sorry if it's not. If it's like China or something, I'm so sorry. But basically, they have like a lot of cults there. I won't tell you how this connects to it, but they have a lot of cults there, and they kind of prey on like people who need like help. Are people just in like not good situations, and like a medium in quotes into the family and takes like control of that, and it's super, like, my god, it's a ride. It's so good.
Very spooky. Damn.
Yeah, I was thinking just now, kind of in that same vein of like where we draw the line at what is and isn't horror. Because I was gonna ask, have you seen the movie Parasite?
Yes, I have.
Because I don't know what the actual Caroline, have you seen the movie Parasite?
No, I have not.
But it's like,
Me too.
that's was that classified as a horror? It was classified as like a social horror movie, right? Yeah. Because I think that that's one of those movies that's interesting because it doesn't play like a normal. I guess this is gonna be spoiler alert for Parasite if you haven't seen it. I'm gonna try to keep it general. Caroline, I will try to keep it general, so like not talk about any plot points, but like it's a very disturbing film, I guess, but it doesn't read like, your average horror film. Like it doesn't I guess I think of horror still as kind of either like supernatural or slasher, and that's not really what Parasite is. But I would say, like, Aanisah, having seen it, where do you think that falls within the parameters of like the genre of horror?
It certainly, I wouldn't, if someone said it was horror, I wouldn't like lash out, but like I've heard people kind of describe it as like thriller, like suspense, which like I feel like that's a pretty good niche for it, because like that's essentially what it is. But it definitely gives you like the same like off feeling when you watch it, like most horror movies do. So I mean, you could debate about that for a while.
Yeah, I will say I think it's like the turn from the first to the second act.
Oh my god.
Caroline, when you watch it, you're gonna know like what I'm talking about, but that turn is like the moment at which it gets closest to being like pure horror.
Yoki dokie.
But yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna watch it with the lights on.
Probably smart.
Yeah. I was gonna put on my sweater that I called the Big Monstrosity because it's big and fluffy and nice, and that's what I wear for like encountering scary things. But like I said, AC out, so no. But yeah, I will say I completely forgot until like just now in this like today that I actually do consume horror media kind of regularly in the form of podcasts. Because I've recently been getting into the Magnus Archives and Archive 81, both of which kind of paradoxically are making me want to look into like an archival job, just because it seems chill when there's not like, you know, monsters and cults around trying to get you. Like I could record things and file stuff. That's something I have skills in. But yeah, like those I think are the ones where I can handle hearing like a description of something really gory or graphic or like like skin crawling. But like I think just the visual like stimulation of seeing something really gross happen is what like kind of makes me totally clench up. Like I can handle body horror from like a distance where like my imagination is there and my imagination knows that I'm going to be freaked out if I do something. So it's just like, here's like the mildest version of what we've got so that we can go to sleep tonight. Cool, cool, cool. So yeah, like that level of separation I think is kind of handy for me. Have you experienced that with like other forms of horror that you've experienced where there isn't maybe that visual component to it?
Well, here's the thing. For like books, I read like horror books. I've heard for some people like that mental block is just not there. Like their imagination is just like, fuck you. You're gonna get this like the whole picture. Eli, I see you. But, like,
I have my whole own thing, but I will let Aanisah go.
But for me, I would say that for me it's kind of mild. For at least for books, because that's the weird thing about me. I love reading books, especially horror books. I love like thinking about what's going to happen, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so accustomed to horror. Because like someone could someone could just like rip someone's arm off screen, and I just be on screen, and I'd just be like, oh, okay, like that kind of thing does. I took my mom to a horror movie, and I was just completely blank faced with like a really graphic scene, and she was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" She was like, "What? Like, do I need to take you to like a psychiatrist?" But no, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so accustomed to it, or just for like books, especially since like I don't even react to like on screen or like visual horror. Like books, like they'll definitely get they'll get a reaction out of me, but like not so much in like the graphic kind of way, just more like of the like look over your shoulder, like something might be behind you kind of way.
Yeah. So how long have you been like consuming horror media? Like when did it kind of start for you? Like how long has this been going on basically?
Literally since I was a child. Like I would read like scary stories to tell in the dark. Like I had like my aunt like cleaned out my grandparents like office, and she found like my old like big book of like serial killers and like and another book of like other horror stories like folklore. So like I've kind of always been on it.
Did you read Goosebumps?
Yes, you know I did. It was so good. I loved it. I think I still have like a copy of like Slappy's first story.
Nice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as far as like the mental dam goes, I kind of have it, and then I also don't. Because the thing is, my brain doesn't like whatever it is. My brain takes the most extreme version of it. I think it does whatever the exact opposite of your brain, Caroline. If you get like the most mild version, I think that my brain always goes a step farther than like even things I've seen, and I think part of that's overactive imagination. Part of it is like a little bit that I have like occasional intrusive thoughts, and that also like adds on to my brain's ability to manifest things much worse. But I do have something that I don't know if it's good or bad or just different. It's always, whenever I imagine those things, I always imagine them like animated or in an art style. It's never like realistic. There's always this kind of like border where I'm either imagining it in like the animation style of a show I've been watching recently or in just like a specific art style. So it's not like full realism, but it is the most extreme version. And I will also say I watched my first horror movie when I was 8 years old. And as we said in the intro, I have not known sleep since.
Ooh, what was it?
It was, I think I may have told this story before, but it was the movie The Watcher in the Woods. I watched it with my Girl Scout troop, but my Girl Scout troop leader had a cabin in the woods, that we
Oh,
went to, and then we watched this horror movie called A Watcher in the Woods, and then in the middle of the night, after watching it, we then proceeded to walk to the nearby graveyard through the dark without a flashlight.
What?
So yeah, that's part of the reason why I don't watch horror movies, because my first horror movie experience was, you know,
Y'all
in
went-
the woods, in a movie about the woods, and then I also went and visited a graveyard immediately afterwards.
Y'all went for the full immersive experience.
Yeah,
Oh my
God.
God.
it was terrifying.
That
I mean,
is like
looking back, it's funny, but in the moment, I was,
Yeah.
what the fuck is happening?
Yeah,
Like,
no,
no one-
Jesus Christ.
No one like, maybe this isn't a good idea to like
Yeah.
expose their kids to all of this at once.
Yeah, I was like, maybe we should prevent them from doing the absolute most.
No, my troop leaders are like, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh Jesus. Yeah, and I will say like the mental dam does have its limits, because that means that if something is extreme enough, like even the mildest version of it's gonna freak me out. I think there's this thing with Brazos Bookstore where like if you were a kid and like you read a book and then reviewed it, like they would let you have it for free or something, or it was like new books that they had like advanced reader copies of that they would like let you, you know, write a review of. And so I picked this one book and it looked like it was gonna be typical spooky, like there's like, you know, a ghost in this old house and like there are, you know, like dead relatives to worry about and whatnot. And we'll see what happened at this like big mansion that these people are in. And then it turned into like a psychological horror that rapidly went into like body horror, like for the last 60-ish pages. Like basically the thing I remember most is like this girl's dad ended up getting murdered and then like cooked and served, and it was like a whole thing. And I was like, what the where did this come from? Like the main mystery didn't even get that resolved. It was just like, yeah, this used to be an orphanage and then that burned down and then they built a house on top of it and we're not going to address whatever the fuck that is. Who gives a shit?
Not
Add
important.
on a plate. And I was like, cool, great. And so I got a little bit traumatized and I literally had to like ask an adult friend like months later. I never returned the book. I never even like started to write it. I was just like, ah. And then I told my piano teacher who knew people at Brazos Bookstore and like explained the situation and she took it back for me. So it's not in my life anymore. But it was rough. I was like,
Sounds like
what?
a bad time.
That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Like again, like Mary Downing Hahn's books I was really into because those are like,
Yes.
yes.
That's so good. Oh my goodness.
Oh my god, yeah. And they're like the perfect amount of scary for me because it's not like if people are in mortal peril, it's typically not for, you know, very long stretches and there's no body horror. It's just like spooky ghosts doing some bullshit. And it's meant
But
for
it's
middle grade
so good.
readers, but it's still really good with like the lore and the backstories and how the ghosts are character, and it's so great.
It's so good.
And it's so great.
It is. Like I binged like all of her books. I just binged them like during the entirety of elementary school. It's so
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, I had like a bunch of her books on my Kindle and that was how I read them.
Oh, Anissa, I was meaning to ask you, in screenwriting, you brought in this one short film that was part of like a series of short films, and it's like the guy and his face is weird, but what he does is he goes around and kills people if they don't like handle the problems in their life. Do you remember that?
Life coach.
The look-see.
Yeah, life coach, but with murder.
Yeah.
Very motivational life coach.
It's called The Look-see. It is
Mm.
terrifying and really good.
Mhm.
I mean, okay. So that first time I saw that, it terrified the shit out of me. Like I was like, what emotional problems do I have and how can I solve them immediately so I don't get killed? But I remember my favorite one was there's spoiler alert. I'm just gonna describe an entire episode. Not beat by beat, but just the basic premise. There's this man, he's a single dad, but his child is dead, and it's implied that it was because he wasn't paying enough attention to her.
Mm.
And basically every like anniversary of her death or her birthday, he just kind of like gets a birthday cake and he just kind of sits at the table alone, and it's really sad. And he just kind of remembers her, and so the look-see decides, hey, you know what I'm gonna do? I just need to get over his trauma about kind of causing his daughter's murder low key. And I'm gonna force him, not through therapy or anything, but through scaring the shit out of him, and I'm gonna make him get over it. Which this
I
is
feel
That was
like-
healthy.
I feel like with grief, taking a moment to remember a loved one's passing on like an important day is not really like if he were doing it every day, that would maybe be a cause for concern. I don't see how it's a problem if it's just like a little day of remembrance for himself. That just seems like he's like, you can't have any grief or trauma at all, and if you do, I'm gonna traumatize you more.
no, but I think I can't remember the exact details of the episode, but I think he was kind of dealing with it in a healthy way.
Okay.
Like I think he put like a doll of her like in the chair one time. Like it was. I can't remember the exact details, but it had that air of like it's okay, but you're kind of not dealing with this in the best way.
Yeah.
However, I don't think an eldritch abomination from the ether is going to help you going to kill you. It's going to help you get over that.
I don't think. Yeah, he's like he's going to be over his emotional problems because he'll be dead and he won't have any.
I mean the logic.
His emotions will be gone. So.
But
Like,
he
damn.
kills this man. He kills this man by snapping, like turning his head to like a 180-degree angle.
Oh.
And like the doll of his daughter is like in the front of him. So like the symbolism there is that he's looking away. He's not paying attention to his daughter. Like you just have to see it. It's kind of all those episodes are kind of a wild ride. I can't like adequately give it justice because it's just kind of a wild ride. And then there's this another story about this mistress like being like thinking I'm gonna take over as the wife.
Okay.
I'm going to be the wife. And then Lexi comes to her apartment and he's like, he's this dude. You know this dude is never gonna like actually drop his wife for you. So what are you doing? And he terrifies her, and then he does it with the wife. Like you didn't get over your husband. And what he does a lot.
Does he get to the husband though? Because I feel like
yes, he does. Yes, he does.
good. Because I was about to say.
In fact, gets to the husband. It's kind of, but just it's terrifying. That's all I'll give you. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
I would recommend it.
Yeah, I was thinking, speaking of dolls of children,
Yes.
it was another one that we watched in screenwriting. I think it's a short film called like The Doll Maker. It's either The Doll or The Doll Maker. Yeah, and the whole premise behind it is like essentially, if you have like lost a loved one, this doll maker can like make a doll that when you touch it, it forms like or maybe even just like when you're near it, it looks like the living person and it acts like the living person, but it's just a doll and you can't take it outside the house.
It's when you touch it.
Yeah. And it's a really good, just like generally creepy short film, but the twist at the end is like, ooh,
Yeah.
I saw it coming a little bit, but I was still like, this is good writing.
Yes.
Yes. I have a big problem with seeing twists, which makes movies less enjoyable, but you know, yeah, it's
Well,
a
I am a
well-documented
sucker.
problem.
So I was like, whoa! I never could have predicted.
Me too. Like I'm not good at like seeing twists. I'm just like
Yeah.
I'm just here along for the ride.
Yeah, I'm just like, you know what? The movie's gonna hold my hand, and it's gonna tell me where I need to go, and if we're going somewhere different than what I expected, that is not my problem, nor my business.
That's not for me to decide. So,
What the writer has in store, the writer has in store. Who am I to question?
Vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I'll physically rend a movie apart like after the fact. But,
Yeah.
like during it, I'm just very like complacent.
Mhm.
It's kind of like the equivalent of like when you start arguing with someone and then the conversation ends and then you go home and you're like, fuck, I should have said something else. Like,
Happens to me all the time.
yes.
So here's the thing: I don't even get into those arguments, but like I'll just come up with random like good insults. I'll be like, I need
Yes.
to fight with somebody to told this out.
Yes.
Anisah's constantly planning her next verbal spat, and it's very fun.
I'm planning verbal spats that don't even make sense for me as a person. I'm just like, well, now I have to make up a character to go with this dialogue. Fuck.
Nice. My brain just hit a hard restart, so someone else carry the conversation.
Okay.
Yes, I may. Speaking of movies that I kind of I was taken on a ride for, and I had to sit down and think, okay, what are we doing here? I saw Ma. It's like that horror movie by like with Octavia Spencer, and she's like
Yeah.
this lady who invites these kids to like.
She's
"Hey,
the
come
cool
here in
mom
my-"
to the neighborhood
Yeah,
Yeah.
here in my basement, kids. It's
Until
okay.
she suddenly isn't.
kid. Yeah, until she very suddenly isn't.
I went to see that. I went to see that with Piper, and like
Mhm.
during it, I was like, "Oh my god, this is so good." But like, now after the fact, I'm just kind of like, "What the hell was that?" And not in like the basic premise wasn't bad. Like, and Octavia Spencer is such a good actor, but like there are just certain parts of the movie where I'm just kind of like, no one talks like that. Like my friend kind of explained to me, she went to see it and she was like in like a all black theater and it was like really packed and they were just kind of looking at it and like black people we do this thing where we just talk at the screen, especially during horror movies, and it's such a fun experience. But anyway, I was just kind of silent during when I watched it, but they were just kind of like throwing like all out all of the things that didn't make sense. I just kind of remember watching those moments and I was just like, yeah, wait, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Why
Yeah.
did I not comment on that? Like, no one talks like this. Why did I comment on that? And it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have
Like
you
when it's
seen? Sorry, you go ahead.
like when it's like a kind of communal experience or when you can all kind of like make fun of it, I think that one kind of like strips some of the scary stuff of its power a little bit so it's a little more palatable. Also, it's just more fun. It's fun to come up with things and like add your own experience instead of just like having this pre-packaged thing before you. It's like, no, I'm gonna make this whatever I want to make it with the people around me, and I'm gonna have like a little bonding moment with all these other folks that I don't know, which is really cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Anissa, do you know who Kenny JD is?
Yes, I do. I love her.
Yeah, because she has a
I watched the video about Ma.
yeah, she has a series. I guess for people listening, she's a series called Bad Movies with a Beat. She did a video on Ma. I've never seen the movie, but I watched that video and I was like, huh, cool. Glad to know I was justified in not really, seeking this movie out.
Yeah, I saw the reviews of it and I was like, oh, that's sad.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, that happened to me. That kind of communal movie experience happened to me during Us. Like before I start, like when the opening credits were like kind of rolling up, I legit started shaking. Like I was terrified to like watch the movie. And then my mom was like, looked over at me. She's like, "Do I need to like hold you down, sweetie? Like, do I need to hold you down?" But like as soon as it started up, and like I was in like a mostly black theater during that time, and they were all just kind of talking at the screen and like laughing, and that made me like that just instantly kind of took all of the fear away. Like I was still kind of afraid, like not afraid, but like I still felt like the emotions of like the horror, but like it just it like kind of calmed me down. I was
Yeah.
surrounded by people, like really funny people actually, who are all like kind of enjoying this experience with you. So nothing's gonna happen to you, and that kind of lessened my fear of the movie in general. But like I still can't listen to the scary remix of "I Got Five on It" without looking at my door and wondering if my twin clone is gonna come out of there and just kill me for whatever reason and take my place. But that's fine. We all deal with trauma in different ways.
Sometimes you just have to reckon with those thoughts, Yeah. I don't know. I want to watch that movie, but also I'm aware that like it's probably gonna be a bad time for me.
Like I legitimately like I feel like me and you, we like get like images and like the feeling of that moment. Even though realistically that can't happen, you're still just kind of like,
yeah.
Like, I mean this genuinely. You probably don't want to watch it because like
I figured.
I live in an apartment, so like I felt kind of safe like after that movie, but like I couldn't go into my grandparents' house without being like looking at the driveway and just being kind of like, I don't like that. I don't like that. I can't
like that
stay
one
over
bit.
here.
Not a fan.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to think of like other. I think that horror is really interesting because horror is a genre that can get pasted on top of other genres. Like I feel there's some genres that I guess horror is like it's an addendum genre. It's not often the base genre because I feel like it's always on top of things. And all this is to say, I think horror and sci-fi work really well together. Like a lot of the most famous horror films are also sci-fi, and I'm definitely thinking of Alien, and I'm just
Yeah.
gonna throw it out there.
I'll
But yeah,
say,
it's like those two really work well together, I think,
Mhm.
horror and sci-fi.
Yeah.
that's kind of, I don't know, that's what I kind of like about horror. It's like very flexible. Like,
Yeah.
you have psychological horror, you can have sci-fi and horror, you can have romance and horror, you can have, yes, it's been done, it's really cool. You can have comedy and horror. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
the Raimi Evil Dead movies are really good. And you can just kind of, oh, speaking of that, have you seen The Cabin in the Woods?
I've heard of it.
It's basically like they take like there's this company, quote unquote, that like has all like the horror cliches just like kind of stockpile, and these teens go into the cabin in the wood and they basically try to get them killed throughout, and they basically try to make like a horror movie which is
Mhm.
like in real life with real people, and it's kind of fucked up, but it's still really fun. It's like it's funny, like it's surprisingly funny. Like they
Mm.
have they bring out zombies, like they bring out like a mermaid, not in like the great sense, like in the the ugly
In the
Ah.
Harry Potter looking.
Ah!
Potter sense.
Yeah.
It's just really great.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, horror comedy is really funny. Have you ever seen the SNL John Mulaney Pete Davidson horror comedy sketch?
Yes.
Yeah, that's such. The character's name is Chad, right? That's like
Yeah,
the
that's his name.
Yeah, all the
That's
Chad skits are really great. That one's especially great.
Yeah. That's the one where John Mulaney's threatening him over the phone, right?
Yeah, it's like it's
Mhm.
very. I think it's a Friday the 13th. They're parodying, I think, Friday the 13th.
I thought that was Scream.
Maybe it's Scream.
I think it's great.
Yeah, it's not Friday the 13th. I don't know what I'm talking about. Friday the 13th is a different masked villain.
That's
It is
the
Scream.
yeah. That Friday
Yeah.
13th is camp.
But we watched because we watched the opening scene of Scream, which like that film is the skit is a direct parody of.
Mhm.
And it's just really funny to like because that's a good example of horror comedy.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what's the weirdest thing a piece of horror media has ever made you afraid of? Because my answer is architecture.
I'm gonna need you to elaborate.
Okay, because a book that I will keep bringing up because it's one of my favorite books is my 9th grade summer reading book, House of Leaves.
Mhm.
The whole premise of this is it's a horror story that starts with the idea of a house that's a quarter of an eighth bigger on the inside than it is on the out, like a quarter eighth of an inch bigger on the inside than it should be based on the outside dimensions. There's
Okay.
like the outside dimensions mean that the inside dimensions would have to be something like say 30 feet.
Mhm.
And then the inside dimensions are actually like 30 feet and 1/8 inch. And not that scary, right? Like, okay, that's a little bit weird. But then it gets into like the house is a living, breathing entity that's actively trying to kill the people inside of it. And the only like monstrous thing you ever see is the house itself. Like
Mhm.
doors open into long, impossible, extra worldly spaces that you go in, like people go in and then get lost in, and then their bodies reappear later, and you never see a monster. You just see this like house slowly killing everything within it. But yeah, I got really scared of architectural inconsistencies because of that book, because it was like, if your house is messed up, you're gonna die.
Mm. Or you just had bad architects who didn't like insulate the walls properly and were like, we can make that wall like a little bit thinner than all the other ones, right? So we can push that back a little bit to fit the dimensions, right? No one's gonna notice.
Yeah, but yeah, so that was like the weirdest thing that I've ever been afraid of because of horror was architecture. A good book will do that to you, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think.
But I mean, it's always been like kind of the thing of horror. It makes like the weirdest shit. Like
Yeah.
like Coraline made me terrified of buttons for a hot second. Like, and The Ring made me terrified of like TVs and VHS tapes for like a good minute. Like, there's a lot of weird things that I'm terrified of because of horror. Like, not like I won't flinch when I see it, but like, I'll definitely eye it a little longer than I need to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like another thing is red balloons.
Oh my god.
Well, yeah.
Me and my mom, we still kind of freak out about that. Like, one time we were like the freeway or whatever, and I saw like a balloon in the air, and I was like, "Hey mom, look at that balloon." I was like, "Don't worry, it's not a red one." And that's kind of been like the inside joke, but just balloons. Like,
Yeah.
why the fuck am I afraid of red balloons? And then
Yeah.
watch it, and you'll see why.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. God, I don't know. I think like horror related. I'm not sure if I've ever had a lasting fear come from one of them. I am just kind of uneasy around like Ouija boards, just because I'm like, just in case, I don't want to fuck with it. Why fuck with it? Like, I know logically, probably just a toy and a piece of cardboard, but why bother? Why bother?
Why tempt fate?
Why tempt fate and summon some bad shit
Mm.
to deal with? Is my question. Like, there's so many people who are just like, don't use it improperly, or like, you know, like people like giving all these warnings. It's like, it's completely unsafe if you do it this way. And I'm like, if it comes with that many warning labels, I feel like maybe Hasbro should pull it, but it won't because it wants to make money.
Yeah, because teenagers
Scary.
will always be buying Ouija boards.
Yeah. The real villain, the real horror movie villain, was capitalism all along.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Pennywise just wanted to sell more red balloons. It is just propaganda for Big Balloon.
Pennywise just wanted people to come see his traveling circus, and no one did because he was a murder clown. And so the answer to that was to become a larger and more dangerous murder clown.
To say nothing of the animal abuse scandals surrounding, like, most professional circuses nowadays. Like, that's not a viable business model for anyone. Ringling Brothers is out of business, straight up. What makes you think a clown could succeed?
A singular clown.
A single clown. He does one dance. That's nothing. Remember that time in 2016 when all of us were terrified of, like, getting attacked by random clowns? Like that, like there were random, like, clown sightings for like a hot second in middle school.
Like, I'm sorry, but like the thing that popped into my head when you said that was like this. I remember reading this article of this man dressed as Batman, and he chased this clown.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that happened.
Like, that happened in our world. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, I think the most I remember from that is like we were all kind of freaked out about it, and then we were like, I was in my leadership class, which is a whole thing from my middle school, and the teacher went over to the door because I think he heard like and like looked around because I think we heard someone like coming up the steps to the temporary building we were in, and he was like, guys, there's like a clown outside. Does anyone know what's going on? And all of us fucking screamed because we were like, fuck, we're all about to get got. We're gonna die. And then it was just an assistant principal who's not dressed anything like a clown, just coming up to deliver some papers. And we were like, yeah, our leadership teacher completely punked us on that one.
Got him.
Yup. It was the worst. Oh, God, yeah. I mean, I wish we could go back to a time when we were just worried about like clowns attacking us in the forest. Just when there was clown stuff going on, because that shit wasn't even real. None of that shit was ended up like having happened or something. It was just like some bullshit. And now we have this shit going on. I want to go back to clown attack times, is what I'm saying. They were simpler. 2016, I hate to say, was a fucking improvement on where we are now. And I never thought I'd fucking say that, but it is.
Do you guys remember when we were all making, one second, my brain just shut off. When we were all making conversion therapy jokes after the 2016 election, and whoever thought I'd be nostalgic for that time.
Like, we're making conversion therapy jokes now. Fuck.
It's true.
I've seen a bunch of memes about like, haha, we're like checking off the apocalypse checklist, which.
Yeah, I mean, what is
real every day.
There's like I mean, is it Yosemite or Yellowstone that has that volcano that's due to erupt soon and end the planet whenever it wants?
I think Yellowstone has a super. You're talking about the super volcano?
Yes.
I believe that's Yellowstone, because that's where all like the gas and stuff comes from.
I was just gonna say, like, at Yellowstone, whenever you're ready, buddy. I think we're all in that mental space. Just wants to happen. That'd be cool. That could happen at any moment. That's fun.
We love.
You guys, speaking of doomsday things, you remember the Mayan calendar ended and everyone freaked out for a hot moment?
It wasn't 2012. Yeah, there was a joke I saw recently about like it wasn't 2012. They read it wrong. It must have been 2021. Which makes more sense.
honestly.
Yeah, but everyone was like, it's the end of the world. And I was like, is the world gonna end? And I asked my parents, and they're like, probably not. I don't think so. And I was like, okay, cool.
What is there to do if the
What
world
is there to do? Truly.
Yeah, what
Vibe.
can we do?
Like, you're not gonna change the world. Like, this isn't freaking Harry Potter, man. Just, we're gonna die.
Yeah.
Strap in.
Yeah, speaking, I guess, of apocalypses, thoughts on apocalyptic horror? I have some opinions on it.
I mean, I don't know if I even consider like apocalypse stuff horror, because it's like, I don't know, I think like apocalypse is so big now, it's its own genre. Like it doesn't kind of exist within the confines of a genre like horror or a genre like sci-fi. It's like its own thing, because I think that apocalypse narratives all have more in common with each other than they do with like any of the like other genres you could assign them to.
Okay.
And I think apocalypse stories like dystopia stories, I think that there are some really shining ones that are like interesting and fun and are very cool to look at. And then a lot of them are like the same story with a different protagonist each time. So I think like apocalypse is a genre that I think has a lot of potential, but I think is often not used to the maximum of its potential.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like a novelty more than horror.
Yeah.
You know, like people like think of horror, they think of like being afraid, but when people think of like kind of like apocalypse dystopian, like kind of just think of like, ooh, let me get my mood board of all like the badass shit I get to wear when like the apocalypse happens, or like
fucking vision board for when the fucking world ends.
Vision board of like all the cool outfits I'm gonna wear, like all this leather. Like that's
What's stopping you, boo? Wear leather now.
I mean, period. Like unless if you don't want to sweat out, but go ahead.
Yeah.
You can do what you want. But I mean, it's not like that scary anymore, because
okay.
Like, you just kind of think of, when you think of apocalypse or dystopia, you think of like kind of, honestly, weirdly enough, freedom. Like there's no societal constraints.
Yeah.
There's no taxes to pay. There's no senator with more money than you who can like take your life away at any time. There's just a barren wasteland or whatever,
and you and your gun.
You and your gun. So I mean, like what really? Because we fear like the societal constraints more. I think more than we fear like having none of those, like having just complete freedom, because it's just the fact, because they're more subtle. I'm not gonna like get into like we live in a society. We do.
Yeah, we do. Kind of by definition, we are people living in a civilization. That's kind of a society.
It's kind of society, but I think apocalypse is really enough, kind of almost like an escape. It's just like you can do whatever you want, and you can like, you got a gun, and you can like maybe have like a little dog companion, or like if it's like a supernatural like apocalypse, you can have like a little zombie dog or whatever.
Oh. If you become one of the zombies, you can have a little zombie dog.
Zombie dog.
Oh.
It's kind of more like a novelty than anything else, really.
Okay.
Now.
I think
so. You think it's like the immediacy of horror is what kind of defines it, of like the urgency or like kind of the immediate situation, instead of like just kind of grueling, like sprawling wasteland before you and just having to like live your life that way. Like,
I think it's also true that like at least for me, the best horror is horrifying because it takes place within the confines of the world we live in, or like it takes place in a world that looks like ours. Because even like supernatural horror or stuff like the Blair Witch Project, where it's like, yeah, that's obviously not going to happen because, you know, science says no and whatever.
Science said fuck off.
Science is incorrect. No. But it's like, horror is horrifying because it takes the world you recognize and twists it and turns it against you, right? And like I think that makes like sci-fi horror, as much as I like it, it feels a little bit more removed, because it is like, it's horror, but it's not in a world you recognize. And I think apocalypse stories also have that same like almost disconnect, because it's not taking a world you recognize and completely turning it inside out. It's like, this is a world that is foreign to you and is terrifying in its foreignness, but horror is terrifying in like this could be in your neighborhood. This creepy house where kids go and get murdered could be something that exists in the city you live in. There could be a serial killer coming to kill you tonight. You wouldn't know. And I think that's why horror is so terrifying, is because it's so viscerally of our world.
Yeah. I will say masked serial killers make a lot more sense nowadays, because now it's just like, oh, they're being socially responsible. I will say this, so that's like a really interesting distinction that you make. And Aanisah, you mentioned zombies specifically a little bit ago. So in terms of like horror video games, so do you think the Walking Dead like Telltale game, do you think that falls outside of that kind of spectrum? Like, even though it puts you in that immediate, like, does the immediacy of the situation of like being in a zombie apocalypse kind of offset the like you still have to learn how to survive kind of day by day and take it that way?
I wouldn't say, because here's the thing about those games, like it's more of like a shooter than a horror game, or like an emotional ride and a shooter than a horror game. Like, you feel me?
Okay.
Like, because you can sort of, when you think about those games, you can sort of see yourself like on like a radio tower somewhere, like aiming a gun at some zombies from like a safe distance, as where like are just like you can visualize having something to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Like you have like a gun or like a bat or something that's covered with nails. Like you can envision that protection. But like I think what's so terrifying, like horror, I think is so terrifying about it is that like there could be like a serial killer coming to get you and like breaking into your house and like trying to kill you, and you could like run out to the street and like scream for help and no one would believe you. And like that's way more terrifying. Weirdly enough, like Eli said, like familiarity is way more terrifying. It's like,
okay,
people are assholes, like straight up. Like,
yeah,
there's like a good chance that if that did actually happen to you, no one will believe you, and either no one will believe you or no one would give a shit. And that feeling of you have no help, and like you can't. It's not like you can like. I mean, you could, but it's not like you could like take a bat to something like that, because I mean, shit, you might end up in jail. Like, it's just so many like immediate blocks, like protecting yourself. Whereas in the Walking Dead games, you got a gun, you got a bat. It's like society is completely torn down. No one really cares. Like,
okay,
you just try to survive, man. Like, I would say zombies are like kind of terrifying, but
yeah,
I don't know. Like, right now they've been kind of overused and in different ways too. So like, it low-key kind of takes away the terror of
yeah.
Like, the zombie as a concept is like used in so many different ways, like for comedy or for horror or for some freaky instances, romance. But
oh yeah, warm bodies happened.
Yep, that happened. That did happen. That wasn't a collective fever.
Wasn't there also like a Disney Channel movie about like dating a zombie?
Yes, there was.
Yeah, there's also iZombie. And also zombies have showed up in Minecraft, and I feel like once you show up in Minecraft, you're kind of done as a horror monster.
But like, zombies have almost become like the vampire boyfriend at this point. Like, they're not that like
zombies are up there with vampires and werewolves. You know, they're just
Also, I'm gonna go on a tangent about Frankenstein and to be put in that group.
Oh yes, please.
Are you
yes,
kidding?
please.
Listen, are you kidding me? Like, a young tortured scientist and his beautiful creation along together? Are you kidding me?
Okay,
like,
I will say this. I will say this. The tortured scientist is not a fucking scientist. He's a jobless, he's like an unemployed college dropout is what he is. And he's such a pussy that when he saw what he made, what he spent fucking months and years of his time making, he took one look at it and he was so freaked out. He fainted, got a fever, and then went insane for the next like several weeks, giving the monster ample time to escape. I am far more sympathetic to Frankenstein's monster than I am to his deadbeat dad.
Honestly, I mean, fuck Victor. Like,
fuck Victor.
Really. But just, I don't know, the concept of that, if you take out the fact that Victor is like an asshole, then like that premise is very appealing. We went off to a completely different tangent.
No, I think we can tie this back in actually, because I think the reason that it's partly so terrifying and part of why Mary Shelley wrote it was because for her that was something that was within the realm of possibility in her life, because it was inspired in part, I think, by like seeing a scientific demonstration where like a scientist used electricity to make like a dead frog's like leg muscles twitch, and she was like, oh shit, like what if we can actually bring bodies back to life with electricity? What the fuck would that look like? What are the ethics involved with that? So I think the reason that it's kind of endured so long and become kind of a staple is because, at least at first, it was an example of like, this is kind of horrific, and what if this actually happens and goes further? Like, as a work of speculative fiction, it's really an amazing piece of work. Mary Shelley was also great. There's a rumor that she lost her virginity on her mother's grave to a married man, which, like...
Go ahead, Mary Shelley.
I mean...
No one else is that goth. No one else has been that goth since. No one else ever will be that goth. I just... Like... Even if it's not true, the fact that it's attributed to her is so good.
The fact that someone, like, one person said it and enough people were like, yeah, that sounds like it could be true, that it's just, like, a thing.
Yeah. I mean, you know, she was raised, her dad was friends with a bunch of radical philosophers, and they basically, like, helped raise her, and then she ended up the way she is. She snagged a married man at age 19, got him to divorce his wife, like, got him to leave his wife for her, then invented the genre of sci-fi and horror at, like, 19 years old. She was a queen. We love to see it.
And here's the thing about Frankenstein. Like, if you read the actual book, like, the stuff, like, the shit in the movies about, like, electricity, they made that shit up. Like, they made that shit up. Like, full stop. Like, if you think about, like, Frankenstein, like, the actual plot of it, they like, this man is in his college dorm room. Like, you know he doesn't have, like, good scientific, like, equipment.
This boy's... He's such a dumbass canonically. Victor Frankenstein. I'm just gonna wail on Victor Frankenstein here for a few minutes if y'all... Alright, so this motherfucker, he like grows up in the Swiss Alps. He's having a great time. His parents adopt... This background sounds off topic. It explains a lot about who he is as a person. So his parents like dote on him all the time. He's their only child. And then they go off and like they're touring some poor country, and then they see this one poor child that's way prettier than all the other poor children. They're like, excuse me, why is this one blonde? Where did you get this one from? Clearly she's not yours. And they're like, she's from a rich family and we just kind of have to take care of her, but if you want her, she's yours. And so they adopted this poor child, because fuck all the other kids, I guess.
If you're ugly and poor, you're not getting adopted.
To hell with all these other children in poverty. This one's coming with us. So she's his adopted sister, who they basically treat as related to him, like a cousin, and who he loves like a bride, because it's the 1800s and he's from an aristocratic family. He's homeschooled his entire life and is so behind on the sciences that he's really excited when he gets there, but he starts spouting like alchemical shit in his natural philosophy class instead of actual current scientific theories, gets clowned by his professor for being such a dumbass, then goes back to his dorm and is like, I'm gonna learn everything, and then I'm gonna figure out how to make life, and then you'll be sorry. And then he makes life, and Frankenstein is like 3 framing devices, but within at least one of them, he's like, I'm never going to disclose how I made this life happen, because no one else should have that power. So yeah, everything they have in the movies is bullshit. But Frankenstein is also a dumbass, so he might have just gone like zippity zap after doing some grave robbing. So, you know, that's how the movies also made Frankenstein's monster ugly, which I don't like.
I mean,
he's hot canonically. He's like the prettiest man who ever existed.
Like, don't at me. He's hot canonically.
He's hot and he's smart. He speaks fucking 3 different languages and knows all this shit about philosophy because he taught himself how to read it like fucking chronologically like 2 years old. He speaks fucking French. He knows fucking science. What the shit?
Yeah, anyway. But I mean, it's like early Universal, so you know we can't have like a sympathetic...
Yeah, we can't have a sympathetic villain, God forbid, but you know. Anyway, Frankenstein. I have feelings on it. I've read the book. Don't fucking at me.
I hear these feelings at least once every 6 months. It's the same series of conversations Caroline and I go down.
Fucking stupid Victor Frankenstein is every 6 months.
Caroline, you and me need to sit down and just talk about Frankenstein for like a good while, because so many feelings, like, my god.
Yes, we need to do this. We may just have you, like, just fucking, in a future episode, it's just gonna be me and Aanisah talking about Frankenstein for like 2 months.
I'm there, but I'm silent because I've never read it and I have nothing to add.
Read it.
Read it.
Oh no, I'm not gonna do that. But I recognize that I've been lightly threatened into reading it, and I'm not going to read it. But I acknowledge the threat.
It's nice to feel validated and seen and affirmed, you know?
Yeah, I see you threatening me, and I accept that you're threatening me, and I'm not gonna follow through on what the threat is, but
Okay.
That's all we want, Eli. Just acknowledgement of the threat.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think also with monsters, and maybe this is like edging a little bit away from horror into just general supernatural, but I guess supernatural exists as like a subset of horror. I am, and I think anyone who's ever listened to me talk about cryptids before knows that I'm fucking fascinated by like the idea of cryptids, and I have a whole spiel on like why cryptids are the modern evolution of mythology that I'm not going to get into here, and I should have gone into on the mythology episode.
Probably.
But yeah, my thesis is essentially like the human desire to create mythologies and to explain things through mythologies. We no longer consider these stories to be mythologies because now we've reached like a point in time where mythologies are considered ancient. But cryptids are like cryptids, and especially American cryptids, are like the modern evolution of like a mythology in the United States. And also like across the world, but I think the term cryptid is specific to the United States. All of this is to say cryptids fascinate me and the stories around them fascinate me, and also just like there are some of them that are so ridiculous. Like they're like the 2 foot tall cornmen, I think in Idaho, that are just there, and I don't know why.
Because it's Idaho and they have a fuck ton of corn, Eli. Try to keep up. Oh, wait, no, I think Idaho's potatoes. That's Iowa, is corn.
Maybe it's Iowa. Somewhere with corn, they have the cornmen. And it's also amazing the amount of like states whose most popular mythology is just like some variation on an alien. Because there are a few states that are original, but a lot of them it's just like, yeah, it's an alien, and it looks slightly different from our neighboring states' aliens. But we have aliens.
Y'all's aliens went on a fucking road trip. Fucking acknowledge it. I will say this, it does make sense because I think mythological, like, especially in Greek mythology, there's a similarity between, like, Greek mythological figures and rural cryptids like the Mothman. Namely, the big one being the both of them have statues with really great asses. And
people are horny for them.
Can I?
Mothman's apparently a really nice butt, according to at least
depending on what you say, I'm going to at you, but go ahead, Aanisah.
Go at me, but low-key, I would fuck Mothman.
Aanisah is a confirmed monster fucker. I've been saying this for over a year now.
We know that we know. We've known.
But now you've confirmed for the internet and anyone who stumbles across it, Aanisah is a monster fucker.
Hey, Shape of Water is out. I'm not afraid.
You can't silence this community, Eli. Stop being a bigot.
I'm not silencing the community. I'm just silencing Aanisah specifically because I've heard about all of Aanisah's. I saw Aanisah smash her pass list for monsters. Like
I have a bucket list. I swear to God, if they're real.
It's
You're
not the general. It's just Aanisah.
Like, listen, my hall pass list is extensive, but I'm gonna need you to look.
My hall pass list is extensive, but it's also 90% things that maybe don't exist, so...
I swear to God, if they exist, it's on site.
Oh, man.
Aanisah, like, if Aanisah was a protagonist of, like, a Monster of the Week show, it would be a regular Monster of the Week show, except instead of ending with the monsters being killed, it would just end with Aanisah seducing them.
I think it's Torchwood, Eli.
Maybe. I've never watched Torchwood, but that sounds accurate.
Captain Jack Harkness is horny for most.
Well, yeah.
I mean, seriously, like, put me as a protagonist of, like, those Scooby-Doo episodes. Completely different ending.
On Scooby-Doo, though, it's just like old white dudes trying to commit insurance fraud, I'm pretty sure. Those are decidedly unsettling.
Wait, that is kind of a lot.
Yeah, it's just a lot of people trying to commit insurance fraud.
They're like, I want to wreck my shop so it can get abandoned and old, and then I can get some fucking payouts from it. And it's like, that's so bureaucratic and also unnecessary.
We love Scooby-Doo. It's a mile.
Scooby-Doo is really funny because it's also a bunch of people getting revenge not by committing murder like almost every other mystery show does, but instead by dressing up like a monster and just messing with people's lives.
Yeah, I feel like most Scooby-Doo mysteries could be solved if they just went to like the neighborhood party city and were like, who's been in here recently?
You know what? My wife cheated on me. I'm gonna dress up as Frankenstein's monster and haunt her new husband. I mean,
all right, if that's how you want to cope, that's how you want to cope. I guess I can't stop you.
that might not be healthy, but I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we really can't condemn anyone for monster fucking, confirmed or otherwise, until we acknowledge that, like, I mean, how far do we want to go? Like, what is the line between like monster fucking and just like normal sexuality? Where do vampires fall specifically? Do
my
those
God.
count?
Okay, here's the thing. Here's what I will say.
Okay.
If it's attraction to them because of like just the pure aesthetics of that vampire, it's not. If it's attraction to them because they're gonna suck your blood while you're having sex, that's monster fucking. You are a monster fucker. Appearance? No. If it's any of their vampiric qualities, yes, you are. No escape.
Yeah, I will say this. I saw a post on Tumblr that was like really quite succinctly, I think, explained why most people are like into vampires, and is like, yeah, it's horrifying that they want to like drain your life from you, but also the neck is a sexy place to get bit, and I think that's like, like, yeah, it kind of is. I get it. Like,
I mean, I think it's also the fact that like every single or most people who describe the feeling of getting like your blood sucked by a vampire describe it in a euphoric, borderline orgasmic way, which doesn't help the case of vampires why blood sucking is.
And like if the vampire is in a committed relationship with the person they're about to drain, like it's treated like it's a whole big like commitment thing. And like, I guess that's true, but also why do you have to frame it like you guys are about to have sex for the first time? I feel like these two things should maybe be disparate. I mean, hopefully you're using protection in both instances, but
Yeah, speaking of that, like, what's like the? Because I mean, like, you could catch something if they.
Bloodborne diseases are a thing.
Yeah, like what do you have, bro? Like, hold up, we need to get you tested.
Yeah, like we need to get Zika before we go any further in this relationship. Like, do you have West Nile? Tell me now. Like, I'm just thinking of stuff that mosquitoes can transmit, and it's like West Nile, malaria, Zika, like all that shit.
Yeah, and like don't like sometimes they'll describe vampires as like drinking from rats, and I'm just like,
gross.
All right,
I don't want that.
Hold up, like that's not sexy.
That's not sanitary. Those aren't clean. Don't put your mouth on rats.
No.
Don't bite a rat. That's our advice from the Hater podcast.
Whole rat, like cooked maybe, like, but not with the fur. Gross. Like that's just like getting like. I can only imagine like getting like fur in your mouth would be an awful experience.
Oh, that just made me think of that one Doctor Who episode where all the like teachers are bat people and they eat the rats. There's this one episode, and it's not even. Doctor Who is like, sometimes they're like, oh, it's a horror show, but it's not in like almost every episode. But there's one where it's just like, the whole point is that there are bat people who are looking like humans, and they're using children's brains as supercomputers to try and break the universal code and become gods.
Oh yeah!
But they also just eat frozen rats.
Yeah, I remember that. That's just what snakes eat.
Yeah, it's
just go to a pet supply store and get some rat. Okay, fine. I guess if they're food grade for snakes.
Yeah, it just really undercuts the horror of the rest of it, because it's like, yeah, but every time I look at these, I'm like, these people eat frozen rats. They don't even eat like actual food, just rats.
Just rats. No food, only rats.
No food, only rats.
But yeah, so I think I've also seen like a Kinsey scale for monster fucking, where it's like maybe one humanoid monster to like just anything and everything, like a gelatinous cube.
I would not. I'm sorry, but I would not. Like, you have to at least have like a.
Let's go through the monster manual for D&D and just see.
You make a joke, but that's what we did.
I don't remember which one we did.
I looked up a list of monsters, and we just stood at the back of this classroom, and I would read a monster out to Aanisah, and Aanisah would say, smash or pass.
Okay, so you made it sound earlier like it was a thing that Aanisah had subjected you to unwillingly. It sounds like you were not only encouraging this, but facilitating it.
Well,
No,
no,
this
it was
facilitated
Aanisah came up to me and started the conversation, and then I got intrigued because I wanted to see how far this would go, and then we ended up, with a sphinx, which is mostly a lion, and Aanisah said yes.
Okay, don't at me, but I mean, you're gonna at me no matter what I do.
Yeah. There's no way for a monster fucker to win in today's society.
I mean, really. We are really a minority community that really needs to be heard.
There, I sent this I think I found the Kinsey thread.
Yay! Yeah,
Yes,
I found it. All right, cool.
All right, Aanisah, where do you rank yourself on this list?
Wait, let me just.
All right, so I'm gonna read Shall we read the ratings out? And
I will read it because I already know what my answer is because of like who I am as a person. So I will read it, and then you guys can find yourselves on the list. So
okay.
0 has literally no desire to fuck any monsters whatsoever. What the fuck? Which is like the most I don't want to happen. This I said that in the wrong order, but it's fine. 1 is prefers humans, but would consider fucking more humanoid monsters, which I guess is like werewolves, vampires, zombies, that kind of thing. 2 kind of prefers humans, but wouldn't pass on the opportunity to fuck a cryptid. 3 equally likely to get caught riding a human or a monster. 4, which is I think this is where it gets into super questionable territory. 4 mostly into monsters, probably has a list of humans they would want to blow their back out. So it's like mostly monsters, but you got a hall pass, I guess. 5 generally into monsters, can see why someone might like that one human. Or 6 is currently trying to get robbed by at least 2 cryptids behind a Denny's. And then X, which is neither humans nor monsters, 0 interest in anyone, which is where I'm at because I am an asexual person, and so sex is kind of not on the table for me.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about me. I am 2 through 6. And that depends on how I'm feeling.
Nisa oscillates from a 2 to a 6 depending on the time of week, I guess, is what she's trying to tell us.
Yeah.
So you go all the way up to getting robbed behind a Denny's.
Oh my god, are you kidding me? Hey.
Okay, but which 2 cryptids are you currently trying to get to rob you behind the Denny's? That's the real question. Mothman is obviously one of them.
Oh my god, are you kidding me?
That moth face and that man's ass.
They did not have to make his ass.
They didn't have to make his butt that nice, but they did.
They really did. Okay, another one would be, let's parse this out because this is an important choice.
Because you gotta think about who's compatible with both you and Mothman because it's simultaneously.
Yeah, you gotta. You gotta establish a foundation.
It seems like it's both of them at the same time behind the Denny's.
So you've established a foundation of trust and like respect with the Mothman. So you're ready to introduce another person. So who is this other person that like both of you would be into?
Abe Sapien from the Hellboy movies.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, look up a picture because it's basically the shape of water monster, but like he speaks.
Doc, that's good.
Okay, so you, Mothman, and Fishboy.
Yes.
Cool.
Cool. Good to know.
All right.
The image should be coming in now, Caroline, and then you can answer where you are on this scale.
That is a striking face.
It's Fishman.
He either doesn't have a nose or he does, depending on which medium he's in. This is interesting.
True.
So which version, Aanisah? Are you going for live action, no nose, or comic?
I mean, okay, here's the thing about the live action one. He looks good at certain angles. Like, the picture you have of him right now, like, I wouldn't. Loki, like, you have to take that off, bro. But,
it's certain lighting.
It's certain lighting.
Just a photograph well. That's okay.
But, medium, both. Absolutely.
Alright.
You can have me, but it won't change.
Yeah. I guess I have to pick. I'd be 1, I think.
Okay.
Because I can see, like, either, like, a vampire, or if we're, like, counting any supernatural creature, then maybe one of the Fae folk. But, like, yeah. People who are known for being pretty and, like, seducing people, like, yeah, I'm human, that they're designed to do it. It's their job.
I was about to say it's their job.
exists.
Fair enough, I guess. I don't know. I think you've talked about lesbian vampires enough that I know that presented the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All lesbians in fiction are all vampires in fiction are lesbians. Not all lesbians are vampires. Some aren't.
Yeah, a good deal of lesbians aren't vampires.
A good deal of lesbians aren't vampires. But
Those two groups
a
can
lot of
overlap.
female vampires are lesbians, except for those like the daughter and the mom from Hotel Transylvania. And I'm not counting Adam Sandler movies as like part of any literary canon.
Oh,
okay.
I know.
So no. Yeah. So that's where I'm at with that, because we got Carmilla from both the book and the web series. We got Marceline, Vampire Queen.
Yes.
We have Danny from the Adventure Zone. I think that's her name. And we have, God, there's one more. Fuck, I'm blanking. Oh, there's that one from Homestuck that's like a lesbian vampire who has a chainsaw as well, who's also an alien. And that's the thing I learned about, because the Homestuck people are based off of zodiac signs, and that one is my zodiac sign.
Wait, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I've tried to disconnect myself from Homestuck as much as possible.
Yeah, I had a friend who like tried to get me into it, and I got kind of far into the comic, but there's like a lot of pages, and I kept losing track, so I didn't finish. It's also kind of confusing, but yeah, there's a lesbian vampire with a chainsaw in Homestuck, so that's cool. Yeah.
I think I've read about 3 pages of Homestuck in my whole life, and I think that's a good number to have.
Yeah, that's a good amount.
Yes.
But yeah, so yeah, I have vampires are cool.
So moving on from that.
Moving to that tangent.
I don't know where we're supposed to go from there.
Yeah,
I think we kind of hit the comedic plateau of this episode now.
Yeah. We all know each other a little bit better now, I think. Or confirmed what we already knew about each other.
I mean, all of you already knew.
'Twas known.
Oh man.
Scale. You got a scale now. Now you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting though. I feel like growing up with horror media being as pervasive it is really trained me to approach everything as if it's a horror situation. And I remember this because there's this like one segment in Skyrim where you're fighting, like you're about to go fight this giant spider thing, and like clearly what's intention to happen is that you just walk right in, it drops on you from above, and then you take like the jump scare of just being randomly attacked from above. But my brain saw that entrance and was like, that looks like a good murder point for me to get murdered immediately. So I walked around the edge and managed to circumvent that fight, which is nice. I think, yeah, horror has at least made me, the fear of horror movies has made me a more aware person because I don't want to get axe murdered.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
D&D kind of made me that way, of just like, yeah, people being like, are you sure you want to do that? I'm like, no, we're going to try a different angle. And that's, that's, I end up doing pretty well in D&D most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's happened to me a couple of times in real life. Like, I think we were on like that Austin trip.
Yeah.
And my roommates like were gonna jump out at me like when I walked in.
Oh yeah.
But here's the thing, I'm not like I've watched too many horror movies, so I just kind of peeked in. I didn't see them, so I was like, why would I walk into that room? Like that's stupid. So I just kind of closed the door and then went back and then called them like, hey, where are you? And like I just kept peeking in. Like I never fully went into the room.
They never fully jumped out?
They jumped out eventually. Cause like not because like not because like I caught them or anything, but because like I saw like the movement into the curtains. I was like, okay, so they're probably in there trying to jump scare me. So I was like, whatever, let's get this over with. And I walked in and they came out.
Yeah, I remember them expressing their frustration at their inability to jump scare you when that happened.
I'm sorry.
My niece is not a fucking chump, y'all.
No.
Not a jump. Like I can see that.
I
Like,
think
would I walk into an empty room? Like that's mysterious. Like that's a terrible idea.
That's a bad idea. I think that happened simultaneously to when we were filming our 20-second horror film in the bathroom of our hotel room.
Mood.
Yeah,
we also did that. Because
yeah.
we were like, we can do shadow puppets in this bathtub that we have put some couch cushions in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was fun.
Impromptu set. It was.
Impromptu set for a little 20-second horror movie. Yeah. 'Twas fun.
Mm.
God. Yeah, I think.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
when I get. Oh wait, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, speaking of zombies, we also that same night watched a horrible zombie
Oh yeah.
show, which we've talked about before. But
It was
I will
bad.
say again, Outlast is a bad show. That's bad.
Wait, it wasn't called Outlast. I think it was
Is
called
it?
like Last Day something.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's on
something.
Netflix. It's not good.
Is
Netflix, was it Daybreak?
Daybreak?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I've heard it's really bad. And,
It
like,
is.
the main thing about it is like not really getting full attention. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's kind of where we were at with that.
It's a bad time.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, like, when I get jump scared, I don't, like, I'll maybe physically move a little bit, but often, like, if I make a noise, it's often kind of pre-programmed in of like, oh, well, I guess I should make this noise now to kind of indicate that I have been startled. Like, it seems semi-conscious to me, which is weird. So yeah.
I do remember, because I've not jump scared you perhaps, but I do the thing where I come up behind you and I put my hands on your shoulders and like literally jump from that position.
Yeah.
And you don't react. I mean, you react mostly just by like, I think you startle is like the only thing that happens. But yeah, that's a thing that I find. I don't know. I only do it with people I'm good friends with, so I know that I'm not just gonna randomly attack someone who like has a trigger related to being randomly just attacked. But it is very funny to watch people's reaction to me doing that because some people will like yelp or scream, even if it's like the 6th or 7th time I've done that to them.
Yeah, I think I just like jump and look like Jesus fucking Christ and turn around, depending on whether or not I have my backpack on, because my backpack is heavy as fuck, and so anyone like fucking with my equilibrium will immediately like piss me off. So yeah, it's probably like, yeah, it's like mild confusion and startlement, and then just kind of vague irritation.
I mean, yeah, you've cursed me out for doing that, but I think that's also because I'm one of the people who you can curse out without repercussion. Because
I curse you out for a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just one of those people. I'm just, you're just one of the folks I can bully.
This is true. I think I was gonna say, if we're talking about our fear responses, I've learned that my fear response is laughing, which is maybe not the most, healthy fear response. But like laughter is a fear response in and of itself, but that's what I do when I'm like scared is I start laughing. So, big Joker energy, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think the Joker's afraid when he laughs. I think that's just what he does. I think he's entertained.
He's entertained, yeah.
I mean, my fear response is cursing and also insulting. Like, I feel
valid.
like I feel like if I call like Pennywise or whatever a sloppy bitch, like some of his power is immediately removed. Like
yeah, like irritation can take away a lot of power from a scary situation because it's just like, no, you know what? Actually, you're just being a little bitch, and I don't like that.
I'm not a fan of the thing that you're doing.
Yeah. Not only do you not get the power of scaring me, you're not gonna get the power of like I now have the power of like affecting your life negatively by getting upset with you. You're not giving you the reaction you want.
Nice.
How do you react to be called the B word? How about that?
I just had a vivid flashback to the first time I was called a bitch. Sorry. Yeah, it happened in the hallway of my church when I was 12 years old.
That's
church?
Yeah.
Church in the Lord's house?
In the Lord's house. I was walking down the hallway. Wow. There was like a guy who was 17 who, I don't know, I made him mad or something. He came up to me when we were alone in the hallway, called me that, and walked away. And I was like, well, that's a new experience I have now.
How old were you?
Was I 12? It was, no, I must have been like just going into my first year of middle school. So like 11, I guess.
Bro! I'm fucking mad now. What the hell?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I didn't take it seriously, which I think is like how I process things. Is if you don't take it in that same vein, if you don't take it seriously, it's not scary or a big deal.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, that was my first experience with that.
I think the first time I remember the first time I got called a whore, and it was by my brothers and his friends, because they just discovered what the word meant, and they were using it on me, I guess, and I was like, I didn't know what the word meant, so I was like, what? What is that? I think I responded, like, and you're a horror, like, to deal with, and then it just walked off, and then I figured out what it meant a few weeks later, and I was like, son of a bitch. So yeah, and then I think I got called a bitch for the first time in middle school. I was in 7th grade, and I think, like, there's this kid who was, like, always kind of getting into trouble. Like, if he was handed a detention slip, he would always, like, rip it up, and it was, like, fascinating to me as someone who never, ever had that kind of, like, nerve or dumbassery within me. I was just like, why the fuck would you do that and, like, not give a shit? And so, you know, like, he was in a lot of my classes, and at some point he just, like, got told off for something, and then, like, kind of did something to scoot into the desk weirdly, and I guess I got caught looking at him, like, a little bit too long, so he just looked at me and was like, bitch. And I was like, okay, cool. That's gonna stay with me for the rest of my life, I guess. Neato.
I mean, I can't remember the exact first time I was called the B word, because I was that kind of person who, I was, like, very quiet and well behaved, and, like, all the people liked me, but, like, if someone tried to start something, I would immediately respond and, like, try to start a fight. So I was called that, like, a lot, just by the very nature of doing that. Like,
yeah.
So at this point, like, it's all kind of blurred together. Like, okay, you called me the B word, so what? I was called that, like, since elementary school.
Yeah.
I kind of don't
misogyny.
care. No, we love it.
We love it.
Patriarchy's great.
Yay.
And on that chillingly cold take, I think we're probably towards the end of this episode, more or less.
All right. Wrap up. What did we learn today?
What did we? Patriarchy bad.
Patriarchy bad. Good to know.
Always.
Good to know.
Horror make you feel things that you want to feel, but you don't want to feel at the same time.
Horror is complicated. Apocalypse, not horror. We know where we've kind of finally hammered down where we are on the Kinsey scale, respectively, which I think is important. That's a good discovery to make.
You already knew where I was.
Or not the scale, the monster fucker Kinsey scale. My apologies. 2020 is worse than 2016, which is quite the development.
And Aanisah's favorite form of horror media is video games.
Yeah. All right. Oh yeah, and porn and horror are technically the same genre.
Yeah.
Remember that, kids.
Remember that, kids. I will link the video in the timestamp doc. Okay. Yeah, I think that's what we learned. You know, I think that's a good, stay safe, wear a mask. Not necessarily a hockey mask or one of those weird ghost masks, but like an actual face mask so you don't breathe on people and get them sick. That's real spooky.
The most horrific thing out there is truly, not being a responsible member of society.
The truly most terrifying thing on this planet is the harm that we can inflict upon other people.
The real horror was the disease we caught along the way.
And on that terrific note, I will say thanks to sawsquarenoise on the Free Music Archive for the use of their song Tower Defense Ending for our intro and outro. Potential sponsors:
Blue
Apron,
HelloFresh, Casper mattresses, NordVPN, ExpressVPN.
If you own a business and you want to give us like $1, we'll take it, and you can be a sponsor.
We'll talk about your thing. If you want to give us money, please. Or if you can give us money, if you're like a small business getting off the ground, also let us know, and we will send you approximately 8 teenagers.
Yeah.
You may not have extra money to spend,
but they'll definitely know about you. Listeners, tell your friends, your mortal enemies, your serial killer stalkers, your
monsters under the bed.
Yeah, the monsters in your bed. Your accidental creation who you shunned for way too long, and then were just a bad parent to.
Victor.
What else? Yeah. Tell Victor Frankenstein himself.
Tell Victor Frankenstein to fuck off specifically.
Yeah. If you ever get the opportunity to talk to Victor Frankenstein, tell him that. But, tell your literature club that slowly evolves into a murder cult. Everyone you can. Tell them about our podcast. And email us fun stuff at heynerdpodcast@gmail.com. And then you can check back next week where you will find an episode. Caroline, do you want to give the episode hint?
It's an episode that I think, narratively, I think it toys with story. I think is gonna be our hint.
Wow.
You put me on the spot, man.
Yeah, that's how it feels every time I'm trying to come up with an episode hint, my friend. But yes, wait, check back next week for that. And we didn't do Hey Nerd, but we should try to do Bye Nerd. So
okay, so
3,
2, 1.
Bye
Nerd.
Nerd.
All right, I think that was good. I think that was good.
Good enough for me to end now.